Our text is John chapter 5 from 1. You'll see that we have a man that was impotent, that was at the Pool of Bethesda. And now scriptures declare that this pool had lots of impotent folks, the withered, the blind, the lame, that were all gathered around the pool. And scriptures declares that in the Hebrew tongue, this pool is called Bethesda, and Bethesda simply means a house of mercy or a house of grace. In other words, there is something about the pool that speaks of grace, but somehow that grace was actually limited in its operation, because scriptures declares that an angel came in a certain season and stirred the water. Now, anybody that enters is able to get a healing. But why is that grace limited in its function? Because it says that when the water is stirred, that whosoever gets in first gets a healing. Ordinarily, grace is supposed to be on a general note that whosoever, like the scriptures will say, that whosoever believeth that God raised Jesus from the dead will be saved. Whosoever. But what we find in the pool is like a shadow option of grace, because it's not a whosoever. It's whosoever enters first. In other words, when you enter second, you don't get a healing. So that limited the grace function of that pool. So the angel comes in, stirs the water, and whosoever enters in first gets a healing. But this impotent man didn't have somebody that was going to take him in. So he remained in his infirmity for 38 years. Now people had men that could assist them, and they were getting healed. First year, second year, 10 years, 21st year, all the way to 38 years, the man didn't have a man that could assist him. Now, interestingly, Jesus knew about that condition and came to this man and asked him, "Will thou be made whole?" I see there's an act of grace in the first place for Jesus to have located the man's case. Like someone will say, "Prophet, locate my case," So Jesus knew by the spirit of revelation that this man had no man. And he came to him in the conversation. He said to him, "Will thou be made whole?" And the man's response was just epic. He said, "I have no man." Now, what's the connection with receiving your healing without being made whole? The question without being made whole and not having a man. He was just trying to explain that, naturally speaking, he would have been made whole if he had a man. He was connecting him not being healed to him not having a man. Now, Jesus knew that he had the power to make him whole. But when he said he had no man, this now begins to give us the prophetic import of this text. The man's answer is coming from a person that is so engrossed with what goes on within the systems of this world. And anything that happens within the systems of this world is likened unto what you find under, in theology, what we call the works of the law. You know the laws of Moses, where they said, "Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not kill," and all that. And they had over 600 other ordinances that we are supposed to keep. But when Jesus now came and sacrificed himself, they abrogated the very aspect of the legal codes. And from there now, we moved into the system of grace that we find today, which whosoever believeth that God raised Jesus from the dead is what? Is saved. So the man's response that he had no man, this is a man that is speaking from a standpoint of the works of the law. Having a man to get your healing speaks of the requirements of the works of the law. And under this requirement, there are 5 things you need. Remember that this is the Pool of Bethesda. Being the Pool of Bethesda in the Hebrew tongue simply means that this is a house of grace, a house of mercy, a pool of grace. In other words, this pool is supposed to emit grace. But the grace it's emitting is actually a shadow option of grace. It's not the real thing. Because the scriptures declares that in John chapter 1 and verse 16, or rather verse 14, I guess, it said that the law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. The law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. That's the book of John chapter 1 and verse number 17. It said, for the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Now, this pool is a pool of grace, but the grace it's giving out is a shadow option because it's not the real thing. It is through Jesus that grace came. Why do I call that a shadow option? Because grace should have been that whosoever steps into that pool receives a healing, but there were conditions. Number 1, the pool needed to be stirred. 2, you needed an angel that would do the stirring. You also need to have a man that will do what? That will dip you in. In other words, first and foremost, you come to the pool of grace. You need an angel that will come and do what? Stir the water. And after the water is stirred, you need what? A man that will do what? Dip you in. In other words, these 5 things actually speaks of the shadow option of grace. Now, when the man said he had no man, he was simply saying, I'm coming from the dynamic of the works of the law. I will have to need about 5 different things to happen at the same time for me to receive a healing. But Jesus, perceiving that he never had a man, he said, this is a good time to make the switch. I'm going to do a switch from the works of the law to the work of grace. And what happened? He told him that if you don't have a man, you don't need no man. Because the reality of grace is here. And he said, okay, you don't need no pool anymore. You don't need no angel anymore. I guess I sent you that yesterday. You don't need no stirring. You don't need no man, and you don't need no dipping. Why? Because the grace factor is here. And what did Jesus say to the man? He said, rise, take off your bed and walk. Now, Naziata, I feel this. Now, what happened to the pool? What happened to the angel that was supposed to come and do the stirring and you having a man to do the dipping? All of that stuff was taken out of the way because she shifted the man from the works, the requirements of the works of the law, to the requirement of the work of grace. And what's that work? That is where you read in verse 17. What did Jesus say?
Jesus answered him,
yes,
my Father work hitherto, and I work.
My Father work hitherto, and I work. Now, the bone of contention there is he healed this man on the Sabbath day. And the Jews were like, is it lawful for you to do this? And Jesus had to explain to them that this healing that he did is his work. His Father works hitherto, and he also works. Now, Jesus called that healing work. In other words, it's the work of grace. And how did he perform it? He just came to an impotent man and said to him, rise, take up your bed, walk. That was the work. In other words, then, it tells us that the work of grace is to speak the word. It was the man needed healing. All Jesus did was to speak the word, and the healing manifested. That tells us that when you have this understanding on any issue, when you speak the word, if the understanding is in place, when you speak the word, that thing must certainly come to pass. In this day that we are in, this season of pandemics and all the stuff that goes on, check it, for 5 months, If someone is doing business, he would have made sales, he would have made profit, he would have had all sorts of stuff. Now, those 5 months just went like that. How do you restore them? So, an understanding of this message makes us to know that by speaking the word, you can birth restoration in your life. You can bring restoration to your business. I was sharing with someone in South Carolina yesterday. I told him, listen, I'm praying for you. And look at the two things that would happen specifically. I told him that the businesses, the profit, the sales you are supposed to make within these 5 months that you don't do business, it is going to be restored to you. I told him, and I meant it. It's going to come back to you. Why? Because I am speaking it forth by the word. And that's the work of grace. You speak the word on any situation. And how is it going to be restored? It's part of our prayer today. Jesus, the scriptures declares in the book of Joel chapter 2, it said, God said, I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. In other words, the pandemic has eaten up your profit. The pandemic has eaten up the volume of sales that you ought to have made. He said, I will restore. It's a provision under God. I will restore to you the years. God is acknowledging that many of us suffer the death of time, the death of seasons in business. You suffer the death of sales and of profits. There is a provision under God to restore those. I will restore unto you the years that the locusts have eaten, the caterpillar, the palmer worm, which be my great army that I sent among you. In other words, if the pandemic, if COVID-19 has eaten off your sales, your potential sales and potential profit, there is a provision under God to restore it. And how does it come? There has to be this understanding, and you do what? You speak the word. The man that was impotent at the pool, he was lame at his feet, he couldn't walk. He needed a stirring, he needed a man, he needed an angel, he needed to be at the pool. He needed an angel to come down from heaven, step into the pool, stir the pool, and he needed a man that was going to dip him into the pool for him to receive his healing. But when Jesus came with a grace factor, he said, you don't need no man, you don't need no pool, you don't need no angel, you don't need no stirring, you don't need no dipping. Rise up, take up your bed and do what? Walk. And the man walked. In other words, when I need a restoration of my profits, when I need a restoration of my sales, when I need a restoration of anything under God, all I need to do is to speak forth that restoration, and it's going to be carried by watchers for a performance. That's what happens. You just speak the word. And I told him, you are going to see your profit being restored for 5 months. You are going to see. The guy got excited.
I'm receiving it.
I'm receiving it. He's excited. As I was praying it, I felt it in my spirit. And I told him, watch this. Why is it going to happen? Because there is another provision under God that says in Philippians chapter 4 and verse 19, Apostle Paul was writing and he said, but my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory. Now watch this. Supply is supposed to come according to your ability, according to your skill, according to your market, according to your positioning, according to what you do. But he left all that dimension and said according to his riches in glory by Christ. In other words, what Apostle Paul was dealing with was not earthly, it was not physical. Supply is supposed to come according to your trading, your business, your merchandise. But he left all that realm, telling you it's coming according to God's riches in glory by Christ. In other words, he is switching it from the natural to the supernatural. Listen to me. In God's riches in glory by Christ, there is no pandemic. In God's riches in glory by Christ, there is no lockdown. In God's riches in glory by Christ, there is no limitation. So what Apostle Paul was simply saying is that you are going to receive provision irrespective of what happens within the earthly realm. Because it is coming not according to the earthly, it is coming according to the spiritual, the supernatural realm. And guess what? In that supernatural realm, lockdowns don't exist. So having this consciousness, you now declare that there is going to be this restoration, not according to the frequency of what happens. is according to the frequency of God's riches in glory by Christ. And when you speak that word, what happens? You now begin to see circumstances. You begin to see opportunities. You begin to see people. You begin to see time. You begin to see events line up to fulfill that word. They tell you I made a post some 3 weeks before it happened that COVID-19 is $1 trillion financial model. It was one evangelist somewhere that picked it. He took the post, changed the color, and put it on his page, and come and see people flooding. I was just smiling where I was. But when I posted it, not a single soul. But after some days, maybe 3 people came to that post. 3 weeks after, they approved how many $1 trillion as a palliative in the United States. We know what happens in this system, because people look at things from the peripheral level. COVID-19 is all an economic, financial model thing. Vaccination is going to come, and world government is going to pay trillions of dollars for it, and someone is going to walk to the bank with those trillions of dollars. As we speak, Facebook has hit more than 650 billion just within this pandemic. As we speak, people have actually profited more because of this COVID. But people don't see what's going on, don't know how to connect the dots and all that stuff. So what we are saying in essence, that the work Jesus did, that he was talking about, he said, my Father worketh hitherto and I work. What was the work? It was basically the speaking forth of the word. He said to the guy, we are not going to wait for an angel to show up. We are not going to wait for a stirring and a man that is going to dip you in. Rather, rise, take up your bed and walk. And the man rose. Excuse me. When you are going by the works of the Lord, you need a man to get a healing. You need a man to get a job. You need a man for your prosperity. You need a man for your success. You know what happens? Men will bring their terms to you. And those terms, probably most of them, you might not be able to meet up. They will bring, in politics, they bring this homosexuality of a thing. They bring blood sacrifices. They tell you that what you enjoy the most is what you are not going to have, but we'll give you every other thing. That is what happens under the system of men. They said, okay, you are going to have threesome with us and we'll give you the job. You've seen people, some years back, people mating with cows just to fulfill the requirements in the system of men. But Jesus has already, by his grace, taken out those requirements out of the way. He just speaks the word because he has already, yielded himself to this work. So he has already taken out all the requirements that we need to engage ourselves in. So he just comes along, tells the man, rise, take up your bed, walk. And the man walked. And he says it is the work of his Father that he's doing. Now, it is that same work that we have been commissioned to do in our day. Because under this system of grace, the law waits for something to happen first to create reality. But grace doesn't wait for something to happen. Grace speaks, reality happens. The word. Grace speaks, and what happens? Reality happens. Put that down somewhere. Put it down. Grace speaks, reality happens. Oh God, I feel this. The law waits for something to happen, but grace doesn't. Grace speaks, reality happens. What I'll do with that word. Grace speaks and reality happens. That's the work. That's the word. That's it. Grace speaks, reality happens. The law waits for something to happen, for requirements to be met before something happens. But grace functions in an antithetical manner. Grace speaks, reality happens. Do you have it down?
Yes.
Good. That's the key word to take home. Grace speaks, reality happens. That's the commission, the mandate we have. If God can raise Jesus from the dead, what can this God not do? If he can,
absolutely nothing.
Nothing. But just I want to figure out how is it going to happen? How will the millions come? No, you don't. It's by the watchers, by the decree of the watchers. It said, "Light be," is a command, and what happened?
And light came.
A light came up. The law wants you to do this, take your this thing there, take this, go and see this senator, go here. You do all that stuff, yet the thing doesn't come. That's law. You keep struggling, keep pushing yourself, keep moving helter skelter. But grace just comes along and speaks and creates reality. So grace speaks, reality happens. And that's the anchor we are going to use to pray. We don't figure out how will it happen. We just speak the word. We just do the work. And the work is to speak. And by speaking from the standpoint of grace, we create reality. Grace speaks, reality happens. That's something to take home. You see what I'll do with it on social media today. Grace speaks and reality happens. So we're going to pray. Yeah. This is sweet. I'm telling you. I'm in the theological field. I know a good stuff when I see it.
Pastor Danfod.
I know a good stuff when I see it. Grace speaks, reality happens. Whoa! If Pastor Beauty, you say, whoa! Wow, this is good. We are going to pray. Let me shut this down so we enter into prayers.